You take the high road and I'll take the low road, and I'll be in Scotland at ye. But me and my true love will never meet again on the bonny, bonny banks of Loch Lomond. And with that lovely, well, Jacobite theme song to start us off, that rather sets the mood and tone for Shannon. It sounds like it's a lovely start. You think it's going to be a heart-stirring start. It does. It's a heart-stirring story. But ultimately, rather like the unfortunate lover who apparently died, the one who took the low road, well, Shannon kind of dies. She's not good by any measure or metric. In fact, the Royal Navy's first armoured cruiser is not just a failure, she's a failure to comprehend. She has so many bells and whistles added in, which just cumulatively add up to make her absolutely atrocious. And she is, without a doubt, a product of some of the thinking which starts with the Royal Navy in the 1860s and 1850s and really takes about 60 odd years to work through the system. In fact, you could argue doesn't work through the system until Beatty retires from his first Sea Lord. But there again, Chatfield comes on. So, maybe the Royal Navy takes about 80 odd years to get through it. There is certainly something which builds into them which causes issues. Very big issues. Anyway, HMS Shannon. I suppose I should show you a picture of her. She doesn't look bad to look at. She looks like a perfectly fine ship. She looks a bit like a shrunken HMS Warrior. Look at those lines. They look perfectly fine for her time. She's got mast. She's got a funnel. She's got everything you'd expect her to have. Yes, she has forward-firing 9-inch guns. But that's not a problem. Surely an advantage. And yes, she's a bit of an armoured citadel, but strange enough, none of her guns are mounted behind armour. But we'll leave that to one side. There is a definite thought process going on in her design. And as an improvement over the General Admiral and Herzog Edinburghsky, her armour doesn't go below the waterline. It doesn't sink down when she's actually put in the water. However, leaving the 9-foot-high armour belt to one side, the same armour belt that doesn't protect any of her guns, well, the rest of her is intriguing, let's say. Intriguing. There's a definite thought process going on with her armoring, but who knows what it has. And she also has a detachable ram, the idea being this would stop her ramming fellow warships in peacetime, but you could attach it on in station in wartime. And I think part of the problem with her is she is deployed to a station where they have no 10-inch. They have no 10-inch protection. They have no 10-inch. She's deployed to a station where they have no 10-inch rounds for her to fire. So she has these 9-inch guns, she has these 10-inch guns. She can never fire her 10-inch guns. She can fire her 9-inch guns only occasionally because they don't have much ammunition for them. But they now have no ammunition for her 10-inch guns stored in the station. So she only has the ammunition that she's carrying with her. So realistically, her 10-inch guns, muzzle-loading guns, are never tested. Never exercised with. They are pointless to be carried. And yeah, she is kind of like Warrior, but whereas Warrior has guns in the armor, behind the armor, and guns on deck, and you expect that from Warrior. She has the armor, and then she has the guns. The guns are above the armor. The 10-inch guns are facing over the bow. There are 6 for each side of the 9-inch guns, and then there is one 9-inch gun sitting aft, which can be swung either way to cover the stern. They actually have the idea that what they would do is they would charge at the enemy ship and ramming them while using their 10-inch guns to provide cover while they're doing the charge. And then they could retreat to the armored part of the ship. And if the ramming failed, they could then fire the 9-inch gun broadside electrically as they passed the target. Okay, you have to give them credit for having the idea. You have to give them credit for having the idea. The idea is interesting. But the reality of actually implementing it in the period we are talking about is very different. And if we consider that remote firing is not a thing that is really something carried out on ships in terms of remote firing with no crews at the guns or anything like that, really carried out until the modern day, in that, yes, even when you're having central directory fire control and they are all waiting for all the guns to be loaded and then pressing a button and they all go boom, there are lots of people in the loop at the various positions waiting for them to go boom, and if the lights go and it hasn't gone boom, they have other buttons to press. One would suggest, if you've not reached the level at which you trust it by about the 1940s, the 1870s are probably not going to work. Displaced 5,670 tons, so heavier than her Russian counterpart she's built to. And they're not the only thing she's built to counter. She's built to counter the La Garçonnière classes and the Alma class of the French. She's built to be an improvement on the Audacious and the Swifter classes of the second-class ironclads the Royal Navy been building. But not, she's supposed to also do some commerce raiding and commerce protection and all sorts of things. So, as built, she's given a ship rig, which is 24,000 feet squared or 22,200 meters squared of sail. This is done because Captain Hood, the Director of Naval Operations, and later Admiral Arthur William Ackland Hood, 1st Baron Hood of Avalon, insisted on it. It was insisted. It was necessary. It was absolutely absurd she be given less. Very quickly, when she came in service, this is reduced to a bark rig because it's found that a ship rig is actually enough sail to pull her over and make her an absolute nightmare to try and sail. Fun. Which has 21,500 square feet or 2,000 meters squared of sail. So, only a drop of 200 square meters or 2,500 feet squared. Her engines, well, she had a Laird two-cylinder compound horizontal steam engine supported by 8 coal-fired cylindrical boilers, driving a single shaft screw with a 3,370 indicated horsepower for a top design speed of, well, for a design top speed of 13 knots, but an actual top speed of 12 and a quarter knots. Yeah, that wasn't really good. How do I put this politely? The Russians were doing better, but with 1,000 indicated horsepower more, well, 1,400 indicated horsepower more. This was kind of embarrassing. The bunker capacity, as built, 280 tons of coal. Didn't turn out to be enough. Ended up being 560. Range. Sails allowed for range only to be limited by food and water capacity, which tells you how much emphasis is put on sail for her ship. She is the last ship where you were able to take the propeller shaft and the propeller up into the hull in order to improve her sailing capacities. So she has a lifting screw, and, that's part of her design. So, as built, she has 2 10-inch muzzle-loaded rifle guns, 7 9-inch muzzle-loaded rifle guns. We'll get into this design, and a detachable ram. Later on in 1881, before she's actually pretty much stopped from ever going out again, she has a refit. And in that refit, they sort of replace guns. They use some breech loading 20-pounders to replace guns, but it is partial replacements. Not all gun positions are filled, some of them are left with the old guns. And 4 torpedo tubes. Always nice to have them. And then, well, the armor belt. But honestly, if I'm going to explain the armor, I need to have this picture up here. I need to have this picture here. So, you're now looking at me going, what are you talking about? Well, so she has a belt of between 6 and 9 inches thick, which includes everything along and this bulkhead and bit around the forward 10-inch guns. So this is the protection she has when she's going into ram. She has this protection belt. And this is between 6 to 9 inches of armored iron. Armor, a sort of steel-ish. Metallurgy is interesting. And 10 to 13 inches of teak. So that is pretty solid. Deck, well, that's 1.5 to 3 inches. And again, this is a kind of interesting emplacement because, well, the armor deck above the belt is 1.5 inches thick. But from the bottom of the bulkhead, there's a 3-inch thick armor deck which extends to the bow. And this is at about 10 feet below the waterline. The space above this is filled with coal bunkers and stores to limit any potential flooding. Please note again, the gun positions are unarmored. The gun positions have no protection. That distance from the bow is 60 feet or 18 meters, which in a vessel which is 79 meters long is quite a significant amount. It's not quite a quarter, but it's not far off a quarter. It's closer than I would personally feel comfortable with. But there again, there are lots of the ship's design which I would personally not feel comfortable with. And again, if we consider the designed operation, the idea was that she would charge at the enemy ship, firing her 10-inch guns, taking any fire on that armored front, and her crew would then retreat inside and they would fire, they'd ram them, or they'd fire the guns electronically as they passed. In simple terms, we often talk about building to fight the last war. One of the interesting things, when Lord Nelson achieves the victory at the Battle of Trafalgar, he makes very plainly obvious the scenario which had already been coming in various other admirals' operations, that the fleets were now going to break the line. This led to, and if you go to Chatham Dockyard, you can see this illustrated brilliantly in the walkthrough session, the need to redesign ships to make them stronger to withstand raking fire from ahead as you are charging your opponents. This ship is being built to refight the Battle of Trafalgar. She is being built to refight it. That is the only reason I can come up with for this armor layout. Even then, I'm not quite sure why they don't give the guns any protection, because that would have been something I'd have done. I'd have thought, if I'm going to put up that much armor anyway, I might as well put in some armor along there. It does save weight, but again, why? I've already got weight up there, and as I've done it, now what I've done is I've given myself a really heavy, quite high bit, sort of not a quarter away from the front, so I've put this sort of weight here on my hull, and it's just gonna... The ship handling, no wonder it was a bit of a nightmare on her, honestly. Just think about the weight of your ship. Think about a modern container ship and the way they take care in stacking those things. Imagine if you stuck all the heaviest containers a quarter of the way along your on your ship. That's what they pretty much have done. She's a failure. She's more accomplished than Swift Destroyer Audacious on a more limited displacement, but that is basically saying that, I don't know, this hat is a more useful covering for my head than this. This is an actual hat. This is not a hat. Because those ships had not been designed in the idea of being an armoured cruiser in the first place. She was used as sort of foreign station ironclad, as she was too slow to be an effective cruiser. In fact, 12¼ knots was considered her maximum speed if you had a tailwind and a lot of luck and love, and generally were praying and were light. So, where did they really send her off to? Well, she spent little time on the overseas station she's designed for. She's commissioned in 1877, but she's kept in dock until 1878 because she's overweight and her engines are horrendously difficult. Somehow they've managed to muck up installing Laird engines. Somehow they mucked up installing Laird engines. I'm not quite sure how, but they did. She goes on a shakedown cruise with the Channel Fleet. And, well, she's dispatched to the China station in April, but recalled in July and sent into dock for further changes. There are issues. She's commissioned again in December 1878, and she serves with the Channel and Mediterranean fleets and is dispatched finally to the Pacific in July 1879. She returns in July 1881. She's refitted. During her time in the Pacific, as said, she's the only ship equipped with 10-inch guns. No other ship has them. And no spare ammunition of this caliber is kept in Esquimalt because it's expensive. It's prohibitive. to send stuff out to places which are far away from home, and it costs money. And also, it's for this. It's one of those scenarios where you could guarantee if the Royal Navy considered it worthwhile, they'd find a way to get some 10-inch ammunition out there. But they honestly don't consider her worth it. In fact, they don't really consider her worth anything. And so, no. The expensive moving ammunition means she never practices with 10-inch guns. In 1881, she returns. She's refitted again, and this time she has 6 20-pounder breech-loading guns fitted. They're considered a better weapon system. In May 1883, she becomes the tender to Warrior. Yes, HMS Warrior, the vessel which was built for the Royal Navy 15 years previously, which you would think by this point with the pace of technology would have been at least heading towards being out of date. No. Warrior, still useful. Warrior, we'll keep supporting. Shannon, you can be the tender to her. She is theoretically reactivated during the Panja incident, which was when Russia decided to try and invade Afghanistan. And, well, the British decided to activate because they were going, you come from Afghanistan, next stop is India. It was settled through diplomacy, but it got very, very, very tense at various points. But please note, Shannon was in the last tranche of ships which were ready for operations, and she was one of the first ones put back into reserve. And there was quite a lot of arm twisting going on to find officers who would serve on her, and I'm fairly sure it was worse for the NCOs. I'm not sure if the NCOs were even told which ship they were going to be going to. They were just dropped off and told, yeah, that's your ship. And the NCOs were going, no, you cannot be serious. Why that thing? Why? So, yes, the first armoured cruiser for the Royal Navy was really not a good one. Now, her hull cost some region of £233,000. Her machinery cost £53,000. Total costs, excluding armament, cost some region of £287,000. And including armament, it's estimated she cost some region of £304 to £306. Although one estimate does go as low as £302,000 to build. So she was an investment, but oh my lord. Yeah. They get better. This is what I will say, is the Royal Navy does get better. They get better. It takes a time, but the first armored cruiser, the Royal Navy was really quite lucky. The Georgia Edinburgh and the General Admiral were not that great themselves. They were actually better than Shannon, but not so much that thanks to the Royal Navy's maritime industrial capacity of the United Kingdom they could draw upon, they were not able to sort it out. It's such a waste. So, what have we got coming up? Well, today, if I remember correctly, this is coming out on the 5th. So, tomorrow is the 6th, which is the New Orleans class. Woohoo! And then we're coming back on to the 1890s. It's 80s and 70s. And we're actually going back on Wednesday. We will be with the Velasco class, the Spanish vessels of 1881. And then it's the Leander class of 1882. And thank the Lord Lubberduck for the Royal Navy. Those cruisers are good. If they hadn't been, they'd have been in real trouble. In fact, then if they hadn't been, this would have turned into a very, very different series. Me searching through the Royal Navy. It's always an option. But no, the Leanders are good. So what is today's question? Well, today's question is this. You are a major naval power. You produce a ship which is absolutely terrible. What do you do? Do you admit it? Do you find a way to quietly get rid of it? How do you handle it? And what I'm saying is not today, but in the period we're talking about, in the 1880s, how would you deal with finding out a ship you bought is a complete and utter lemon? In fact, it's worse than that. It's a lemon squeezer which can't even squeeze lemons. Yeah, that's how bad it is. How would you deal with it? Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and yeah, take care.